everybody, this is Miss Martha. We're going to go over some of the highlights from The Hiding Place, Chapter 5. So, The Hiding Place begins, or rather, in Chapter 5, it begins with war increasing between England, France, and Germany. And the Prime Minister is going to make an announcement over the radio in the evening, and he announces that Holland will remain neutral. And we see from this announcement that Father makes a pretty angry reaction. He quickly turns and angrily turns off the radio set. So we know that that bothers him. He believes that it's giving people a false hope that war will be inevitable, and that the prime minister should be realistic without giving people this false hope of, oh, everything's okay. We can't help but also think that maybe Father thinks that it's wrong that Holland should remain neutral, although he doesn't come right out and say that. Um, the ironic thing, though, is 5 hours later that night, after the prime minister has come on and said that Holland will remain neutral, we have some bombings that begin, and they last all throughout the evening. They're obviously pretty horrific. The family awakens to the sound of explosions. They get together. They pray for Holland. They pray for the injured. They pray for the Queen. And we even see here that Betsy prays for the Germans who are flying in the planes above their heads. She really believes that they are just caught up in that terrible evil. We're going to see this throughout the entire book. She doesn't believe that they are intrinsically evil. She believes that people can change. People may be influenced by evil, but that they can find good, and that we need to pray for them. And I think that that's a very biblical point of view, that God is long suffering and he wants all to be saved. He doesn't want any to perish. And Betsy really takes that view to heart. I think we will see, though, further on in this book that there is a line that we have to draw between um, being willing to help people overcome evil and then helping those who are innocent to not be victims of those who are caught up in evil. All right, so during these bombings, Corrie also has this vision or a dream. I'm not quite sure, it's a little nebulous. And this vision is that she and Betsy and her father, Pickwick, Tooth, Willem, and Peter are being taken away in an old wagon. Corrie says that it's not a dream. She says that it was very vivid, so that it was a vision, while Betsy questions her and wonders if it was a dream. But then Betsy says, that sometimes God is showing people the future to tell them that he is still in control. So we will definitely see this dream or this vision rather come back into play later on in this book. So for 5 days, Holland is fighting against the invading German forces, and people are gathering at the home of the Ten Booms for prayer and comfort, and they're really feeling this surge of community, which can happen. I know all of you, most of you, I think maybe all of you were too young to remember 9/11, and that happened in America, in the United States as well. When you experience this tragedy, when you experience evil coming for you, you band together as a community, and you also tend to turn to God. And that's what's happening here in the Ten Boom home with their community. A few nights later, the family learns that the Queen has left Holland. Holland has surrendered, which is a big deal. Now they're going to enter into this time period in their lives, which includes German occupation of Holland. The first few months of this occupation brings some uncomfortable changes, but Corrie says that they're not unbearable, they're not horrible. Obviously, the presence of German troops unsettles them, which, it would anyone if you have troops that are enemy troops, so to speak, around watching everything you're doing, setting rules. That would definitely unsettle all of us, I think. Um, Corey tells us that the shop does really well in the first year of the war, and the soldiers are getting paid, and so they want to spend their money at the shop. So they're actually doing really well. The Tin Booms are doing really well in the watchmaking business. Um, she also tells us that there are some new additional measures put into place by the German forces that include such things as a curfew, a 10 p.m. curfew. They also make the residents have identity cards, which have to be shown at any time, and there's also a ration system for food. Um, she also speaks about how newspapers cease to relay real news and instead give glowing reports of German victory and denunciation of political opposition. And I think that's very interesting when we think about what an important role the media plays in our society. And sometimes I think they take that for granted, or we talk about the liberal media or conservative media, but I don't think that we really grasp how, when a media is in control from by the government and it's not a free media, such as the case in China right now, or more specifically in North Korea, and that media will not report on anything negative about the government, and in doing so, you're introducing all sorts of hurdles that the people have to overcome if they want to find out the truth. But you're also brainwashing a whole generation of people to join in on your side, which is one of the reasons why the Germans did not like old people, was because it is not easy to indoctrinate older people who are set in their ways and their beliefs. It's not as easy as it is to do so to younger people, which is why, they have the youth of Hitler, because it is a lot easier to get to young people. And the media is one way in which they did that. Okay. Sorry for that side rant. All right, let's get back for on to chapter 5. The Germans demand seizure of all the radios in the home, and the Ten Boom family decides to keep one radio and turn in the portable. And Corey says this is the first time that she has ever lied, just outright told a lie, knowing that she was telling a lie, and she feels bad. But she also feels that the ends justify the means. And so she's okay with that. She is okay with lying there. Um, and then she recounts a large air raid that was going on. And Corey was hearing Betsy stirring in the kitchen and joined her during that air raid. And when she returned to her room, Corey finds that there's shrapnel in her bed. And so, if Corey had been there, she would have gotten injured, if not killed, by this shrapnel. So she runs to tell Betsy, and Betsy tells her that God was protecting her. And I'd like for us to look at this verse that I have up here on the screen, and that's from Psalm 68, verse 20. God is to us a God of deliverances, and to the Lord belong escapes from death. I think sometimes we forget that God is the one who can help us escape from these situations. But look back at this verse. It doesn't say God will deliver every single person who is in harm's way, or we will escape, every single person who believes in God will escape from death. No, but just because not every person will escape from death, not every person will be delivered from things like Corey was delivered from, that doesn't negate the fact that God is the one that we should give glory to when we receive protection like Corey did. So back to chapter 5. As the occupation is becoming more militant, there are Dutchmen who are joining in the against the Jews. They are, the National Socialist Bond is growing, and the NSB is providing people incentives to join them. And so basically, they're saying, if you join our efforts to target the Jews, then you will get more food, more clothing, good jobs, housing, um, things like that. So a lot of people are joining because of that, but there are a lot of people who are joining out of conviction as well, people who are holding these discriminatory views against the Jews. We're also seeing that discrimination against the Jews is starting to ramp up, and they're not allowed to eat at certain restaurants. And there's also the burning of the synagogue. Their families, like the Khans, who are the competing watch shop owners, disappear. Um, we then see let's see, a introduction of a man who is known as the Bulldog. We find out that his real name is Harry DeVries, And anyway, we see him nicknamed the Bulldog because Corey and her father are taking these walks, and they notice this man named the Bulldog, and he's always walking with his dog. And I think we've been introduced to him in earlier chapters as well, if I'm not mistaken. He's always got his beautiful bulldogs, and so they nickname this guy the Bulldog. And Corey and her father come across him one day and notice that he's wearing a yellow star, which does mean that he is Jewish, but he doesn't have his dogs with him. Now they could see from all of these other walks that they had encountered him walking that he adored his dogs. He loved his dogs. So seeing him without his dogs worried them. So Corey, Betsy, and their father decide to visit the Bulldog man. They kind of follow him, and at the Bulldog's house, they learn that his name is Harry DeVries, and they ask him about what's going on with his pets. And Harry tells them that they're not there anymore, that they're dead. And he says that he poisoned them because he knows that since he's a Jew, well, he's Jew by heritage. He's a Jew. He could be taken at any time. He explains that he's converted to Christianity. His wife, Cato, is a Christian, but they still have no protection against the Nazis. So this is not about necessarily even about religious beliefs. This is about an ingrained doctrine of the Nazis, this pseudoscience about the superiority of one race over the other, or the inferiority of one race under another. And we'll talk about this more as we go on, but God created science. And when we try to make our own pseudoscience, when we try to um, push science away, true science away, like the Nazis did, and come up with their own science, so many horrible things that are ungodly started to happen. And we'll talk about how that happened later on in our discussion of this book. But I just wanted to throw that in there for free right now. So the Bulldog, or Harry, describes how he saved up his ration so that his dogs could have some meat, and he put the poison in the meat and they died because he didn't want to leave them there without anyone to take care of them. So father asks if he and his daughter asks if he and Corey can be Harry's walking companion since he no longer has his dogs. But Harry says that he doesn't want the Ten Booms to be in danger for being associated with him, so he agrees to visit their home after dark. And he and his wife become nightly visitors there, and they discuss theological texts and all sorts of things with the Ten Booms. In the spring of 1942, see, arrests are becoming more frequently, and Corrie is beginning to take deliveries to their Jewish customers. And she meets an old Dutch family, the Heemstras. And Dr. Heemstra tucks his children into bed while Corrie is there, and Corrie gets it at this moment. I think up until now she's understood that things were not fair and has lived with this reality, but she hasn't truly understood the gravity of this all. So as Dr. Heemstra is tucking his children into bed, Corrie is struck by the reality that this family with this small children, and sorry if you guys are hearing rattling in the background, it's our turtle. He likes to scrounge around in the rocks. Okay, anyway, so Corey realizes that this family could be taken away at any moment. The child could be taken away, the mom could be taken away, the doctor could be taken away. And at this moment, it's there that Corey utters a prayer in which she offers herself to the service of God's chosen people, however, whenever, and wherever. And when she prays, she begins to see this vision of her family being taken away in this wagon that she had seen before in the vision at the beginning of the chapter. And she has no idea where they're going. So that ends chapter 5. I want to go back to this question, though, that Corey asked in the middle of chapter 5. And it's a big question in Corey's mind, and I think it should be a huge question on our mind as well. And that question is, how should a Christian act when evil is in power? The very first thing that we find in scriptures is that we should give thanks because we should rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. And we don't have time to go in it today, but so many great examples are shown to us in the Bible of people who have suffered, and through their suffering, they have achieved great things for the Lord. And so that's something that we should do when evil is in power, give thanks. And that's something that Betsy was good at, Noli was good at. So two of Corey's sisters were really great at that. However, there are other things that we should do when evil is in power. We can't just stop there and be naive and say, okay, thank you, God, for giving us evil, and then be done with that. All right, there's other examples that we see in scripture of what to do when evil is in power. First of all, hate evil. Okay, we read that in Romans 12, verse 9. Abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. So it is not wrong to hate evil. The next one is to pray for escape from evil. Matthew 6:13. Deliver us from evil. Okay, it's fine to want to escape evil. We shouldn't have to sit there and just thank God for evil and then say, please let this evil continue. That, in fact, that is contrary to what we read in scriptures. The next one is to expose evil. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. We read that in Ephesians 5:11. So we shouldn't just sit by and let evil happen without saying anything. Next, overcome evil with good. I think we are probably very familiar with that verse, Romans 12:21. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And then resist evil, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So all of these things work together. It's not just either or. It's not just giving thanks for evil and sitting idly by and letting evil take over, but it's also working against that evil, exposing the evil. And that is definitely biblical. That is definitely scriptural, something that Christians should do. So hopefully that gave you some thoughts to mull over about chapter 5 and the hiding place, and we will see where chapter 6 leads us.